Hello, hello. Good morning, good morning. Look, it's you, Muddy. And Heather. Hello. Wow, it's a bit of a slow start this morning, it seems. As much as we've got the message that went out, I'm guessing we'll have a few people scatter through as they get here. Anyway, welcome. I don't think we've got any questions yet, do we, Heather? No questions yet. All right. Well, thanks all for coming. That's all we've got time for. I'm sure there'll be more that will come. And I'm sure Muddy has a question or two up his sleeve, ready to rock and roll.
Good morning. Good morning, Heather.
Good morning, Amy. Look at that sunrise.
Morning.
Looks beautiful. Hey, there's a guy spotting.
There's a what?
A guy spotting. As in,
hey, Grant.
Hey, Guy. How are you?
Oh, there's Guy.
Yes.
What's been happening with you?
Oh, all is well. But it's time to do an event, so I need to check in, and I miss the laughs and having fun together and learning and growing.
Nice.
Yes, sir. How about you? How you doing?
Well, I'm doing good. We're getting more and more events are happening, and there's a lot happening. Look at this. Lots of people coming in now. It's great.
Nice.
Once people heard Guy was on, they were like, all right, I got to be there.
Uh-oh. Good stuff. I'll let you get started. Thanks, man.
All right. Thanks, man.
Good seeing you, man. All right.
You
bye-bye.
too. All right. It's all right. We've got a few more people coming in. So if you haven't been here for a little while, then just a reminder to put questions in on the dashboard. There's a ask a question button there, so you can hit that and ask questions about Obvio. We always talk about kind of three main categories of things we think about. Specific Obvio questions are our priority, thinking about how you make Obvio work for you. The next thing we think of is just general sort of digital events, thinking how you might do those. You might be tackling a particular question about that, and we can always throw that around for discussion. And then there's always production questions that we're thinking of too, right? There's always some piece of gear that you're trying to wrestle, or you're trying to think about how you will set up something. Then the geek in me and others is always ready to answer some of those questions, or at least throw around options, because we all know there's more than one way to achieve what you want to do with all the different gear that we have at our disposal. So I think we might have a question from Muddy. I knew he'd come through. Heather, what is it?
Yeah, he has a production question. He wants to know, what are some ways to get audio and video into two Obvio rooms?
Asking for a friend. Nice work. That's a nice softball question from Muddy, who could answer it probably better than anyone. So we had a couple of questions that I saw on the Facebook group around this. People that are thinking about what happens if I go over 1,000 people? How do I manage that? And so yes, so we Obvio, sometimes a little bit of a misconception, and it's probably just it's our fault for not making it really clear, and the education around what Obvio is doing. You know, Obvio interfaces with Zoom, and the limitations of Zoom exist in Obvio as well. And so currently Zoom has a limitation in Zoom meeting of 1,000 people, 1,000 people in that meeting. That's the most that you can get. And so all of our accounts, sort of all of our meetings can have up to 1,000 people in them. So when it comes to running events, if you're lucky enough to have more than 1,000 people coming, then you do have to consider how you get yourself, your content into two separate rooms. Obvio handles the attendee side really well, because it will load balance across multiple rooms, however many rooms that you want to run. You just have to set that up in Obvio, and then away it goes, and it will load balance. We've got a couple of different options on those too, where we can load balance, which means it's going to fill up roughly about the same sort of numbers in all the rooms that are open. The other one is where we can fill up one and then sort of fill up the next one, and so on. So there's a couple of different ways that we can manage how you run those rooms. So when we're thinking about how do we get the audio and video, yes, it is an enterprise feature. Thank you. To fill one, then the next. I just tease people with enterprise features. So when we're thinking about how we get our audio and video into two separate rooms or multiple rooms, it really shifts our production to another level, where we're now thinking of probably producing the event in another meeting, maybe a third meeting, where this is where all your key. Now this depends. Something to think of first of all is, where is all your content coming from? It's one of the differences, one of the many differences between Blue and I. Blue has a beautiful studio in Charleston, South Carolina. Beautiful studio with actually a couple of different studios and a couple of podcast studios. It's a great space. And so often when Blue and Barry are running events, they will have most of the content coming from a studio. And so multiple cameras, all the different content, and then different people that might come in as remote contributors. But generally, it's all happening live within a studio space. And so what they will do is they've plugged all their cameras into a switcher. And then if they do have a remote contributor, then they would be coming in on a separate Zoom meeting, and that would come into their switcher, and they would mix that all. And then that same broadcast feed would go into multiple computers to be able to go out into those separate Zoom meetings. So when something that I sort of specialize in is a centerless event, which is where there is no central place, there is no central studio, but all of the content is coming from remote, so there's no one single place. And so that's where we will have a separate Zoom meeting, which is all about contributors. And then we will take that meeting into our production setup, into another switcher. And then we now have what is like a TV broadcast. We've had multiple inputs and, graphics and video playback and all that sort of fun stuff. And now we're pushing that back into multiple meetings. And so lots of events one key consideration you have to think of is, what is the interaction that I'm looking for between different rooms? So if there is no interaction, in that you're going to use chat, sure. But are you going to allow people to unmute and speak? And if they are, then now you're sort of folding these multiple rooms into themselves, so that when someone talks from room number one, it can be heard in room number two. And if it gets even more complex, where you want room number one to be able to talk to room number two, and room number two be able to talk back to room number one, then it's all possible, but you're doing some complex setups with how your vision, the vision works, and then also how your audio, and it's a lot more with the audio. And we do things like mix minus, which is where we're sending everything to room two except for room two's audio. So when room two talks, it doesn't get itself back. And in room one, we send everything to room one except room one's audio. And so that's a kind of a mix minus. Anyway, so that's the general understanding of what would we need to consider when we're now running multiple rooms. It's not just that you want to get over 1,000 people, because one of the things you might consider is that actually we want to have breakout rooms for our meeting, for our event, and we don't want to have 10 people in each breakout room, which would mean 1,000, remembering that you can have a maximum at the moment, a maximum of 100 breakout rooms per meeting. Breakout rooms are really powerful. We've talked about that a bit before. If you wanted to have, say, the optimal of around 5, perhaps, then you don't want your meetings to have more than 500 people in them. And so now you may have an event with 1,000 people, but you know that you want to have 2 rooms because you don't want your breakout rooms to be too large. So, and then you might be fine that you don't want to have anyone speaking. You don't want them to unmute in the main meeting. You want them to do that in breakout rooms, right? And they can speak to each other and have that sort of conversation. That's great. But you don't want to just have open mic with a large event. And so if that's the case, now you're just thinking about how do I get my signal into those meetings? I'm not worried about getting them out. Then there's some hardware ways of doing it, and there's some software ways of doing it. And generally at this point, like if you're going to multiple rooms, it really is something that you want to have dedicated people looking after. And so you may have the hardware, but you want to have people that are monitoring it, that know how it all works and how the signal flow goes, and they're looking after it so that you're not trying to manage that yourself while you're doing content. And if you're in a good position where you're expecting 1,000 people to your event, then hopefully you can afford to have some extra team members that are looking after this for you. So just very quickly, we often talk about ATEM switches here. And so there's they start off in the ATEM Mini and the ATEM Mini Pro and the Pro ISO, which Heather was asking about on Facebook this week as well. It was like, should I get the Pro or get the ISO? ISO means that you can record those multiple inputs at the same time, and then take that and edit that, and that means that you could edit down your event, and you could make a highlights, or you could just edit out certain things that you didn't want in it, and that would be easier because you have your multiple inputs that you've recorded. So that's what the ISO would do. But the next jump up is what's called the ATEM Mini Extreme. That has 8 inputs, and it has two USB-C outputs. And so one of the things you can do with that is to plug that into 2 separate computers. That'll come as a webcam input on both of those separate computers. And now you've got 2 inputs, and you can run 2 meetings. And now you're able to run the input into 2 separate meetings. So that's something that you could do with hardware. And of course, there's lots of other ways of doing it as well. You think about the audio too. There's some complexities you need to think of with how you're getting your audio in. And if that ends up in the ATEM Extreme, then it means that audio can just be patched into those 2 separate meetings. So another way of doing it, yeah, go Muddy.
So I was asking essentially for the same post you saw, someone who kind of 3 hours before the meeting realized we're going to have more than 1,000 people at this meeting, and we need to act quick to have a solution in place. And having a quick conversation, it sounded like it was primarily a speaker, one person presenting with slides. So it was really kind of a one-way conversation is what they needed. I guess that's not a conversation. That's a presentation. It was a one-way presentation is really what they needed. And so the easiest solution we could come up with the equipment they had in place, because there's 2 rooms, you'll need 2 computers, but the speaker was remote from the person who was doing the production. The speaker can be in room 1 with their slides, and you can have that on the first computer. And as long as you have 2 monitors, you can switch Zoom into dual screen mode, and that will let you have the slides cleanly on one screen. and you can pin or spotlight the speaker cleanly on the other screen. That's really a prerequisite on computer one, is to have kind of a clean view of each of those. And then on that computer, using Ecamm, capture those and create a composite kind of side-by-side view and send that out an HDMI signal, which is one of the things that Ecamm can do. Capture that with a capture card plugged into computer number 2, and that becomes the webcam for computer number 2 that's joined to meeting number 2. So sending the really room 1 is the main room, and then you're capturing room 1 and kind of feeding that as a webcam view into the overflow room was kind of the quickest, easiest solution we could come up with the equipment at hand. Luckily, he had the capture card and Ecamm and 2 computers. So
yeah, it's great. So there's a little bit of a combination of software and some hardware, capturing and stuff. Yeah, there's a few different ways. The other thing is that it's one of those enterprise features again, is actually being able to use software like Zoom OSC and so I ran an event recently, particularly on the Macs and the Mac Silicon. I've been able to run 3-4 meetings on one computer, no problems, using the same input, same audio. But to be able to do that, you need to be able to have being able to get multiple meetings into those separate Zoom rooms to be able to run them. And so I keep thinking of different ways, because I'm not limited by that myself. There's another thing too, is that an account, actually a separate Zoom account that we have, has the ability to run multiple Zoom meetings. And when you do that, now you can launch multiple meetings on the same computer, and you can have that run multiple meetings and have the same input running. That's a really easy way of setting this type of thing up. But yeah, I'm still trying to think about if you don't have that ability, because there's things like the Zoom Cuts app as well is another free app, but you still need to be able to get the start meeting button needs to launch it in the right thing. And I've even thought about Firefox and things like that, where you can choose which app it launches and things like that. So it's possible. So anyway, we're just thinking a bit more about that, because there is some advantages to being able to run multiple Zoom meetings at the same time on the same machine. But yeah, always interested in exploring the multiple ways of doing this, and also then thinking about what the experience is for your attendees when they're in multiple meetings, thinking about that, and potentially even restricting or making your event even a bit more exclusive, where you may say it's capped at 1,000 people. Make sure you come early, that sort of thing, where it's like if you can't get in, that means that there's already been 1,000 people, and you make it a bit more exclusive, and then you can build some energy around your event, where you're like, we're now going to do an encore presentation of this the next day, and right. So you can do some cool things around building some energy around your event because you had too many people. So that's another idea. Cool. Thanks, Marty. That's a good question. There's deep dive into all of that. There's so many different ways of doing that. So share your comments. Have a look in the Facebook group and see how there was some people chatting about that specific need to go more than one room, more than 1,000 people, and see what you come up with. All right, next question.
This is also from Muddy. I think he just wanted to clarify this for some people, but where can people find the links for the registration and sign up pages? Like where they can actually, if you have like marketplace ticket sign up, where can they find those links?
Yeah, registration. Registration should be right if you have marketplace turned on. Sign up is definitely right also if you have it turned on. So if we were to look at let me show you that one first. Should be able to do it on this one. I'll just share my screen in a moment. See what else is on my screen. Here we go. There we are. Right. So for this event that we're running right now, what will happen, this is the sign up. So you would need to enable it. And if it's enabled, then when we go to, let's do this, and we went to updates. Oh, update, yeah. Sign underscore up. Then that will take you to that sign up form. And this is great. Not so long ago, we added this type of ability to be able, particularly for free events, to be able to send this link out to everyone, and have people put their first name, last name, email, and then they'll go into the dashboard. And so that's how that sign up works. So ideally, what you would do is send people their login token once they have signed up, so that they have the ability to go back to that dashboard again. There's a few different ways of doing that. If you don't have the sign up enabled, then it will default to the login page. It'll redirect and go to the login page. And so that's what that link is. Now, if we had marketplace, I don't think that will work. Registration. It'll redirect unless it's enabled. But registration. Now, this is the thing with marketplace too. Once again, a couple of challenges here with our marketplace beta we've been doing. Let me just check, Muddy. Were you saying something about the registration link? That's been your experience. That you get the registration link once you've enabled marketplace.
Yeah, exactly. And I just don't. The reason I bring it up is because I don't know that there's an easy way where those are made visible in the back end. So for folks that want to send someone to the registration or send someone to the sign up, it's not always obvious what that actual link is. So just wanted to clarify. And
that's a good point.
Yeah.
And it is something that we could make a bit more explicit, which I'm going to make a note of. We're doing a couple of updates. I just had a client recently that's just asked some specific, very specific features that they wanted, that kind of just exposed a couple of things for us, which is great. So we've been able to push through a couple of things that you'll see in the next couple of days. Really minor, but are helpful. So one of those is on that on the sign up page. When you, and same actually with the login, which you might see that now. This is one of those times where, let me think here. There's an error message that happens on the sign up. If someone's already signed up and they put their email back in again, it'll say that the email address is already taken. And that's the error message that comes up. Well, it'd be good to be able to customize that error message to make it really clear. If someone's done that, what should they do? And so that's what we're adding, a little field where you can put in a custom message, and you may want to say, contact us at, X email address, if you're having this problem, and we'll, send you a link, or, so there's just different ways of handling that. That was one thing that we're adding. Another one was on, let me think. There's a little bug that we found this week where sometimes resizing the screen on the login page, you couldn't scroll to get to the login form, and so depending on what your screen was doing, that scrolling wasn't work. So that's something that we're fixing this week. We should see that happen. And then another thing that you would have noticed too is when you share your event on platforms that pull in previews of the address, it'll have the name of the event. So the name of the event's correct, but it will have a description, and that is a generic description. And it says, use the platform that's used by Tony Robbins, yada, yada, yada. You've probably all seen that as you've shared it on different services. We are adding also in the next couple of days, in the event settings, just a description field. So now you can put your own description in there, and that's what will be fed when those services are looking for a preview of the site. It'll then use that description, your own description, and so you could say whatever you would like to explain what your event is. So there's just a couple of those little tweaks, and so I encourage you that if, like I had with this client, they say, "Oh, can we do this?" Don't default to no. You can first work out whether it is standard functionality that already exists, and if it's not, and you can see value in it, then please send that through as an email. And it's always something that we can think of as maybe something that we would like to add to help people, because often you've come up with it. We can see that other people would want that same functionality too. So cool. All right, next question.
Frankie wants to know, what is the system you use to send phone texts?
Yes. So I'm not sure if you were asking this question in relation to our broadcast feature, but so let me first say what is current now, and then that there is our broadcast module, which is in beta still at the moment, and the SMS function is soon to be released, very soon. So we will be offering that. I'll talk about that in a moment. But specifically at the moment, you would be needing to use a separate CRM system, so something else that's managing your attendees, and so that could be something like MailChimp or Keep or HubSpot. There's a whole bunch of different ones, or even Zapier. And so Zapier is more like the glue that could connect it to multiple services. And Zapier itself could actually be used to connect to an SMS service and then be able to send from there. So there's a few different ways of doing that. At the moment, that's the way that you could do it. But the reason that we've been building out our own system is that we want to be able to offer people to be able to send text messages. You could even be talking about, did people receive a text message today about this one? I wasn't sure if, yep, you did. So that's all done through Keep. Yep. So we have all of you, all of the attendees for this event are synchronized with our Keep account and the Keep event for this, or the list that is the attendees. And then it was just scheduled and set up that 15 minutes before, send out a message, and that broadcasts out of Keep. And so you could look at that. It used to be called Infusionsoft. It's now called Keep. And you can do a lot of complicated systems for sending emails and text messages and things, and managing your attendees in that way. So that would be there's lots of different ways and lots of plugins for all the different services that would offer text messages as well. And so, but yeah, there would totally be a way to do it with Zapier as well, where you're tying it across and telling them this is my attendee list, and now I want to send a text message to all of them. It could be possible, but we're really close. The complexity with our text message system is that not all text messages you send are the same cost, and depending on how many you're sending, that's quite a large, could be quite a large sum, and so we had to build in a payment system for that, and that's what's has taken the time. The actual text message system from Obvio is working. We ran it first on TVE a few months back. It worked great. We got messages sent all around the world, and people were getting that. So, so yeah, you can explore a few of those third-party services at the moment, and in the not so distant future, it'll be much easier, and you'll be able to do it directly from Obvio. Cool. What's next?
Muddy said, with Avio attendees around the world, the matter of different currencies can become an issue. I've asked recently about selling tickets in different currencies via Marketplace. Can you provide an update about currencies?
Yeah, so we're still exploring that. It looks as though we can support multiple currencies. Obviously, Stripe supports multiple currencies, and Stripe is the service that we use. It's just a matter of how to implement that and how we create that sort of on the front end experience. And when you're deciding to create tickets, are you wanting to be able to decide the currency number yourself, or are you just wanting Stripe to do the conversion? So, which is kind of what happens now. It's in US dollars, and when you go to pay, it could be that you're paying with a non-US dollars credit card, and it would do the conversion for you, and Stripe would manage that. I think what you're talking about is some events may be based just in the UK, for example, or they, Euro or Australia. And so you just want to offer it in Australian dollars, and that's what the event is. And so have that as the standard. And that's what we're trying to explore. It definitely is possible. And what we've found out is that we could manage multiple currencies. What we'd love some feedback on which currencies people are wanting to access or make available. That would be helpful for us, and we can keep that moving. Okay, yeah, John, you're saying pounds, yeah. So that makes sense, and so that's something that we do want to support. I mean, our priority, of course, is to get the new marketplace version up and racing, so that people see there's quite a few advancements in what we've done over the first version that's still there at the moment. So, hey Pam, I can. The Stripe setup is not all that difficult. It's all in the organization settings, and so when you're looking at an event, let me just see here. See if I can do that. I just need to go to an event that I'm the owner of. So when you're the owner of an organization, let's see there. Okay, let me share this. So I'm just looking at an organization at the moment. This is an organization of mine, and I can go here. There's a few different places. I can go here and settings, And now I'm going to see the settings for that organization. And there's two key things that when you have marketplace turned on, when you have the broadcast set on, then you can connect Stripe here. And then that's going to ask you for your Stripe details, and it explains how you connect your Stripe account. Once you have that set up, then when you're working in the marketplace editor and you put in your tickets and things like that, in fact, marketplace doesn't even show up unless you have the Stripe set up. And so it's one of those things that you need to have set up before you can start making marketplace product pages and tickets and things like that. So that's where that all happens. We have been reluctant to share more about the current marketplace system at the moment until we release the next version, because it's quite a bit different and it'll make more sense and it will work properly. So then we'll do some more demos on that when we come out with that. Cool.
All right. So we have a question. Oh.
Yeah.
Did you want to answer Cam's while we were still on the marketplace that you put in the chat?
Sure. So yes and no, right? So the current marketplace version is there, and you're welcome to play around with it. You will find a few bugs that happen, and there's one at the moment that when you do a particular sequence of edits, it can go to a blank page, and sort of empty out the page that you were creating. It's one of the major bugs with it. And what we discovered is that it wasn't just fixing that little issue. We had to step back a little and go, let's rewrite a bunch of that to make it a much more stable and more flexible marketplace editor. So you are welcome to play with it if you've already requested access to it. Then it will. So it's still a beta. It's still a request only. Anyone's welcome to send an email to help@obv.io and just ask, can you enable marketplace for me? And we will do that. By doing that, you understand that you're entering into a beta program of that for that module. And that's great, Kyle. Yeah, did you use marketplace? Unfortunately, no issues. That's great. Yeah, and so there's just certain sequences of activity that can cause some problems, and so we're really close to being able to. It's a big shift in the way that the features that we're offering with it. So we're really looking forward to it. So I guess you can play around with it at the moment. I wouldn't necessarily trust it on a show, but if you were testing it and it was working okay, then great. But it's kind of a beta at the moment. So that's where that's at. Cool.
All right. So Tamara asked, this one was a little complicated. I did an event recently and had some trouble with people who were teammates in a different organization on my account, but attendees or teammates on the test group organization. One was not able to log into the team for that group, and another wasn't able to log in as an attendee without previous labels coming up from a different event. I tried creating them using different emails, but it wasn't until I deleted them as teammates and attendees from the other organization that things worked. If someone is on a team for one organization, can they not be on a team for a different one?
So can someone be on a team for one organization and a team for another? Absolutely. Yeah. So we've built it out to work like that. But I'm real interested in what your experience was.
It was super strange, and I've gone to enough different events hosted on this that I've never had this happen. And I was like, is it user error? It could be, but I don't think so. There were a lot of very weird things that happened. One, I could get one of the guys, I couldn't get him in as a team. I had to just bring him into as an attendee and make him the host of the meeting. I could not get him to work as a team. totally cool. It worked out fine. The other guy is a super user on a different in a different organization, but on this thing, he was coming in as an attendee and was as a panelist. And a couple of really weird things happened. One, he couldn't get in. When he did get in, he had the label from a different meeting. Like literally, I've never seen that happen. But I know he was logging in and getting into this very separate meeting with that old label attached. So that was very strange. His sound wouldn't work. It was like it was so strange. And it took us, like, we do a writer speed date with producers. So he's one of the Broadway producers that listens to people pitch. We put them in breakout rooms, they come out and all this. He could hear, he could not speak. And it wasn't until I finally went into the other account and just deleted everything and used a completely separate email for him that, like, I made up and sent him that he was able to get in. So it was so bizarre that I like to think it's a fluke, but it happened with like 2 people in this meeting. It was so strange.
Sounds very strange.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
wasn't even able to troubleshoot it down to like what would make this happen for him. Literally never happened in any event that I've attended. I've been multiple, and I've people, so I don't know what happened, to be honest with you.
Yeah. So, one thing that is good to be really clear about is the team members that access app.obv.io and that they have access to the admin, like you were talking about with the super admin that you might have called the roles, where they could do anything within the event. Those team members have no access as an attendee at all. There is no crossover between them. And so they don't exist as an attendee. They can't access the dashboard as an attendee because they're a team member. There's no crossover, and so they're very separate. And we get this quite a lot when we're trying to explain how can you come and join and use this link, but they might be using an attendee link, and then they're getting to the dashboard and it's like, I don't know where to go. And sometimes because team members might get an attendee email as well as be invited as a team member. So just make that clear, that if there's ever a time where someone is coming in as an attendee and using labels, then they have not come through the team admin section.
Right. So that's where it got very strange, because he came in because in this particular meeting, he was an attendee. In the other meeting, he was a teammate. When he came in as an attendee, he came in through the link that I sent him as an attendee to that meeting. And he entered that meeting. Like, he was in that meeting, and this was a completely separate meeting that he'd been in like 2 months before. He came into that meeting and it grabbed the label from when he was an attendee at a different meeting. It made no sense whatsoever, because I've never had that happen as an attendee of multiple Obvio events. So I don't know if it was a fluke, but he was definitely in the meeting as an attendee that was like that meeting. He wasn't even going in the back door. He had no backdoor access in that organization. And in that meeting, he had no way of using that other Obvio link. So, and he was literally in this meeting. So I was like, you clearly got here. You clearly clicked the correct link to get to your dashboard, and it took you here. So I tend to think it was a fluke.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen weirdness with Zoom, kind of that overlapping a little bit of names, when there's a closeness. Essentially, what's happening when an attendee clicks a link is that they're using a registration link with Zoom, and that registration link ties to the label. It creates the label. However, once they click that and they get into the Zoom client, it kind of hands that off as a user, and it's possible that if another event was open, it could be that is logged into a Zoom account as well, and generally that shouldn't make any difference. But depending on when that happened and
Right.
what else was happening on the computer at the time, I have seen, it's rare, but I have seen some weirdness of that. Sometimes the name not carrying through properly, or something, and it's normally some aligning of stars that meant that a previous Zoom meeting was overlapping with another one. But yeah, it's
Yeah,
extremely rare.
it was so weird. And again,
It would have been weird.
some of these old Broadway producers, they're not computer savvy anyway. So I was trying to
Right.
check it gently.
And often I find this with what we do with these, and then when we're trying to troubleshoot something, is trying to break it off all down, because it's really easy to and I want to explain it as kind of an emotional reaction. I'm not saying that people are getting overly emotional, right? But it's very easy to kind of bundle a whole bunch of separate issues in as one thing, and it's like, okay, now everything's just broken, and I've got these 4 things that are all happening, and it must be the same thing, right? I'm not saying that's what you're saying, Tamara, because I know you're
No,
actually really
I know it's
technical.
separate things. I just couldn't
Yeah.
figure out which thing.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's trying to break them down and go like for example, when you said that he could hear but couldn't speak, is that what you said?
That was something that had nothing to do with this for sure.
Right. But it's a great example of where people go, so this didn't work. I pressed this and that didn't work. And then I get into Zoom and my microphone's not working. And it's like, yeah, so none of that's connected. There's a reason about your microphone not working, but it's still an issue, and it's still stuff we got to work through, but it's trying to separate it all out and go, okay, so what was this part? What was this part?
It was super strange because it did work once I got that to happen.
Yeah.
Now, I had prepped this group because I got Obvio specifically for this group, and getting them to try something new, as you can imagine.
Yes.
All being people who use Zoom regularly but don't actually have Zoom accounts.
Right.
So it was a successful event, and they were fine with the hiccups because I had done a lot of managing expectations before we got in, because I knew this was going to be a heavy lift and something like this would probably happen. So the event worked out fine. They love Obvio, all good. But I was like, it'd be good if that didn't happen again.
Totally.
At one time, convincing them to try something new.
Yeah, so. I'll be real interested to see how they go again, and just seeing on those. Yeah, there's a couple of things we have as a possibility in the future. We've prototyped on some events, and this sounds like something that could be helpful for you, is when we have essentially an attendee plus is what I think about it, right? Is rather than giving a bunch of people team access, admin access, sometimes you just want to give people the ability to join a meeting as a co-host. But you don't really want them to do anything else. Yeah. And it's one of those things that we're exploring, so that then you can give them the dashboard link, and then they'll get a special button, or like special access. And we've played around with this quite a bit, and I'd like to be able to offer it more widely soon. So that in this case, you would say, here's your dashboard link. Right. You're going to see a special co-host button, and you'll click that and it'll take you in as a co-host, and you don't have any ability to change any settings or anything. You've just got, this special button. And we've done it particularly for some larger events where you have team who need to jump around between rooms. So we might have 30 rooms running and you've got 100 team members. We don't want to give all of them Obvio, admin access, even though you can fine tune that with the roles. What you want to be able to do is just give them the same access as everyone else, the attendee, the dashboard, but they have a special list where they can go, I want to go to that room, I want to go to that room, go to that room. And that sounds like something that, would help in your situation, right? Where you could give
because
some people.
I have a couple of people who are definitely admin people who need some other function.
Yes,
they need
I'm
to
sure.
open rooms, they need to be able to do that. But this is also an organization that some people are going to need access for this meeting, but not for this meeting. So
Okay.
And so that's why he could be an attendee in one area, but then not but then an actual admin in another meeting, because I
Gotcha.
need him behind the scenes stuff. So that's where it was a little murky. And I even tried setting it up as different, like using totally separate emails. Your attendee email is this, and this is you, and you are not that. And it still was a little wiggy. And again, it could easily be user error. I have no doubt that it on the computer, it's not even like on the easy scale. So it's absolutely, there's a combination of things, but it also was like so bizarre. I was like, I don't even know how to report this, because it's just.
Yeah, that's often tricky too, right? It's how do you define what the issue was? So one thing I just mentioned for everyone too is that all the team members are tied to the organization level, which means that they have the same access across all of the events within an organization. You cannot have a different team access for one event than another event in the same organization. And so organizations is actually kind of another way of saying team, like different teams is the organization. And so here's an event that exists in one organization, and then you have another one, and that's how you can separate team and have one team member having access to that particular event, but not having access to the other event.
But that's where the system didn't quite work, because I specifically put this in a separate organization so that I would, because I thought ahead of time that that might be confusing. So I literally created a test organization and plopped this event into that organization. So that's why it was so weird. He had access in a different organization, not in this organization. And so I literally set it in a totally different organization. It was a completely different meeting. He had no access to that. And that's why it was so weird, that's why my question was, can you not be separate organizations? Because he can't see, I've got 3 organizations. He can't see any of the things from the other organizations, but somehow there was a weirdness with it. And when I went in the middle of the meeting to the other organization and I just deleted him as a teammate. I deleted him out of that system, and then he was able to log in fine. It made no sense, because I specifically said, I'm going to put this in this other organization just to be sure, because he's an attendee. He's sat there. So it was like a confluence of whatever happened.
Yeah, it does. Yeah,
but it doesn't make sense based on everything. And not even that I know about Obvio, that I've actually experienced.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, of course.
I'm not making it up. I did it specifically to make sure there was not going to be any weirdness. And there was. And as soon as I deleted, he logged in, and everything
was fine.
Everything was fine. I was like,
that's really weird. Well, look, my I've been doing this type of stuff long enough to know that I try to think in two different ways. And one is I think in the theory of how things are set up within our database structure and how we store things. And so that part of my brain says, well, that doesn't sound possible, but I've been doing it long enough that there's always these little bugs or weird combination where you stood on one leg and you click this button and suddenly now it's all broken, right? And so if you do experience any of that type of thing again, some screenshots, some anything that you can send through that would kind of give, some idea of here's the two different teams, or, this is the person in the two different teams and this is the experience they're having or something. That would be really helpful. But
I will. Listen, my group is going to break all the things. If any weird wiggy thing could happen, it will happen to these folks. So I'm sure something will happen again, and I'll be able to
they'll
try
be
to
onto
figure it out.
Right.
Thank
Well,
you.
I'm sorry you had that trouble, but it sounds
It's
like
all
you
it's all good. I'm an old stage manager. I can think on the fly, so
you can handle anything. That's right.
works out fine.
You change cast members mid-show. Yeah. Cool. All right. Heather, we got another question.
Yes. So Kathleen said, I have just ordered a Stream Deck and became aware that it is not PC compatible with Ecamm. Could you recommend an alternative?
So I don't believe that's the case. So let's just think about that. Ecamm. So something about Stream Decks, right, is that Stream Deck has its own software that can work with a bunch of different software. And it can trigger different things like OBS, for example. You can work with the Stream Deck native software on a Mac or PC. It'll work on both, and it could trigger OBS to do a bunch of things. There's another piece of software called Companion. BitFocus is the name of the company, so BitFocus Companion, and that is software that takes over the Stream Deck, so you don't necessarily need the Stream Deck software, and it can do lots and lots and lots of stuff, and that can control things. I'm just looking at. I'm just reminding myself of Ecamm. Ecamm Live, that's right. And then all the different people playing around with that. Let me just look at this, Ecamm, and then so Ecamm, that's a great way to control the Ecamm broadcasts. Yeah, so there is a Ecamm plugin for the native Stream Deck software. So so you totally can use it. I'm guessing, I'm just trying to remember if so Ecamm is Mac. Yeah, Ecamm is Mac only. And so it would seem to me, and maybe I'm just reading your question incorrectly, but it would seem to me that the Stream Deck is fine, but Ecamm is Mac only. And so if that PC is not compatible, maybe it's nothing to do with the Stream Deck at all. You're talking about Ecamm. Okay, so something on a PC. OBS can do some of the things that Ecamm does. vMix is super powerful and kind of does a whole bunch more. I'm just trying to remember what. There's another one that I can't remember. Someone else, Ycast, yeah, thanks, Muddy. That's another one that does a similar thing. But I mean, I think OBS on a PC is particularly powerful. It's free, It's been built for gamers that live stream, and it's really quite stable and robust. Whereas on the Mac, not quite as much, but it's really PC native and works really well. And then the Stream Deck would work really well with OBS. So I would start there and try to play around with that and see if it does all the things that you're wanting it to do. I really think you could do a lot of powerful things with OBS and the Stream Deck, controlling that remotely. So yeah, all the best with that. Cool.
And right now we don't have any additional questions.
Yeah. Might be just an hour show, hey? Well, now is the opportunity to ask questions. It's 10:30 at night here. I'm perfectly happy to go to bed. I've been hearing about how 10 o'clock is an optimal time to go to bed to get extra melatonin levels and things like that.
Grant, I don't know if you saw this in the chat,
Yes.
but
I do see that. So thought you didn't need Ecamm with Obvio. Okay, so that's just to be clear again about where Obvio sits and where Zoom is. So Obvio is really about getting attendees into Zoom. All of the production elements of how you do your event can be as basic as using the webcam that's built into your laptop and running your event that way, up to full studios and things like that. Where Ecamm comes in, all those things, OBS and things like that, is about doing multiple cameras, screen capturing off of certain things and bringing that into your show. That's bringing graphics in, video playback, all of that. All of those things that are not just native in Zoom, you need some other piece of software to do that. And what normally happens with these systems like Ecamm and OBS and all of those, they create what's called like a virtual webcam. And it will come up in the list of your webcam inputs or your video inputs in Zoom. And so you can choose your webcam that's built into your computer, or you can choose the virtual OBS camera, for example. And when you click that, it's going to show whatever OBS is putting out at the time. In fact, if I do that, that's an example. That's the OBS default screen when you haven't got anything else running on it. So that was just switching that. So there's always these other bits of software that can do all these different things. I also have an A10 Mini, which has multiple cameras on it, and can do things like cutting to images and things like that. And that's what that does as an input into Zoom. So there's always some need for extra hardware or software to be able to do more complex things in your show. Where the Stream Deck comes in, I use the Stream Deck all the time. Use it hundreds of times a day because I have a shortcut for muting Zoom. So I hit this all the time. It's great. I can find it without looking because I know exactly where it is. And if I cough or sneeze or anything like that, I can catch on to this. And then I'm back on again. And so that's just one simple example of what the Stream Deck can do. But you think about that in terms of running a show where you want to play a video. You could hit a button and it plays a video. Or you hit a button and it can show an image. Or if the sky's the limit, and you can have pages and pages of these shortcuts. You can keep hitting these buttons and go through, and you can have multiple Stream Decks. And so that's that's what it's really useful for. But I think you can get these little small ones, like a 6-button one or something like that, 4, 6 button, and then you get this one's a 15-button, and then you get like a 32-button, something like that, and you get all the different size ones, and they're just super handy for shortcuts, doing or maybe even a series of things you want to do at the same time. You can make that happen as well. So that's the little. You can look at some YouTube videos about Stream Deck, and you'll see a bunch of what people can do with it all. It's pretty amazing. Okay, we've got a couple more.
Yeah, so Tara wants to know if you figured out a way to use Zoom cuts in Obvio. I really need to spotlight attendees and usually use OPS and Companion.
Not without Obvio Enterprise. So with Enterprise, you get kind of the direct access to those meetings with the meeting ID and the ZAC, the Zoom Access Token. But they do have kind of a way of putting a URL in there, and I'd like to be able to put a start link in there. And if we could do that, that would be really powerful. So you've brought that to my attention again. I'm going to revisit that.
The jump to enterprise is just too high for my
Fair enough.
events. Events
Totally.
have a lot of production value to them.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. I'm just going to make a note of that again. Yeah, I'll get back to you on it, because I would like to explore that a bit more. Because Zoom cuts you could use some great shortcuts for spotlighting particular people and things. It could be really powerful for that. Cool. Was there something from? Yeah, John, you were saying about, does the Stream Deck play video or just send commands to the device? And it really is just like a remote control, right? So it can remote control another piece of software, and so you could have something else that's sitting there ready to take the play command, like QLab, for example, on a Mac. Stream Deck works great with that. You can have it so that you press a button and it plays a video out, or plays the next video, or things like that. But yeah, OBS can play videos out, and so using a Stream Deck to trigger OBS and play a video over the top of your video, like there's some things like that if you had your camera running into OBS, then you could trigger a video that plays over the top of your camera. So there's a few tricks with that. But yeah, Stream Deck, just think of it like a remote control.
And then Grant, in chat, Steve asked a question. He says he's a client that wants to have voluntary donations as part of the registration. Any thoughts on the most efficient way to do this? It seems like Marketplace could be involved, but if you'd offer some clarity, that would be great.
That's a good question. There currently, in Marketplace, there currently isn't a field to be able to enter any number value, right? So it would be preset ticket values at the moment. I would think that having a link to a separate donation, so like a PayPal donation, isn't there? There's a couple I've seen now, like Buy Me a Coffee or whatever they're called. There's a few of those types of sites around now for tipping, and then of course having Stripe. You'd have a Stripe account. You can do a donation setup on a Stripe page, so you sort of set up your own Stripe page. You can also do with Stripe, I think you might even be able to embed a donation form which form. There's definitely something that I've seen around that could be quite nicely integrated into the dashboard on Ovio, so that you could have just a quite a nice simple little donate here, and in theory it should be able to do it all within that embed and not take you off to another page, which would be quite neat. Yeah. So I would be exploring things like donation embed form. PayPal may have something similar too, but I would think there'd be something that you could do it all within that page. PayPal.me, yeah, I think is what Muddy was just saying. Don't know if that's separate to PayPal.com. Anyway, there's a few ideas there, but yeah, it's an interesting idea for Marketplace to be able to buy a ticket for a low amount and then be able to offer more of a donation on top of that. But yeah, there's a few ideas. Have a play with that. Cool. Okay, buy me a coffee uses Stripe. Gotcha. Cool. Looks like a blank screen again. Sometimes a bit quieter on this week when we do the morning. We've had some good questions though today. We've had some, recently we've had a few larger events that have been going on. Even the fact that people are asking for, what do I do with more than 1,000 people, is a great problem to have. Speaker info page, putting a donation button. That's cool. Yeah, you can totally do it. There's lots of places that you could put that within your dashboard. Cool. All right. You know that when there's no questions, there's only the clock starts ticking as to when we shut down. Nothing more in there. Well, we will be back. What's that down there? Sorry, I just got distracted by something on my. Oh, I see. I have a little stats monitor on my screen that just tells me how much bandwidth is being used, and I saw it go really high, but it was just because I have screen sharing on my local network. That's what was going on. That was a question that nobody asked, and probably very few care about, but I'll let you know anyway. So next week we'll be on at 5 p.m. Eastern on Wednesday, so it makes it a little bit easier to get to for some of you. And you can always come to this same link that you've followed today. You can always go to the dashboard and enter questions during the week. I had a few people do that. When you think of a question, you can post it there straight away. And even if you can't make it to the event, then you can watch the recording back and hear the answer to your question. So you don't have to be here to hear the answers or the conversation around what you're thinking about. And then, as always, you can email us at help@obv.io, any of your questions, and then there's live chat through business hours generally on within the admin. You'll see that down the bottom left. There's a little button there for live chat. You can talk to one of us if you're wrestling with something right at the moment that you're playing around with it, and we can try to help you through it. So awesome. Well, thank you all for coming on. Hope you have a great week, and that all your event planning goes great, and you're excited. Look at that, Carl. Hey, and have a great week. Cool. Bye-bye.